Hello, my name is Kent, and this is one in a series of how-to videos that we're producing, helping our customers to upgrade and maintain their Grizzly equipment. This is Sean. He's an engineer here at Grizzly. And together, we're going to show you step by step how to check the alignment of your table saw blade with the miter slot and make any adjustments if needed. This video is designed to give you an overview of the procedure and to help you visualize the process. It should be used in conjunction with the instructions that came with your table saw. We recommend that you view this entire video and that you read your instructions thoroughly before you begin this job. You can also call technical support at 570-546-9663 if you need further assistance. Your table saw will give best results if the miter slot and rip fence are aligned parallel to the blade. If either of these are not parallel, your cuts and your finished product will be lower in quality, and the risk of kickback will be increased. Take the time to adjust your table saw properly. A few minutes now will be time well spent. The first step is to disconnect the saw from the power source. Use an adjustable square to measure the distance from the miter slot to a single tooth on the blade. It is generally easier to check on the opposite side as the blade tilts because you can use the end of the square better when the blade is tilted. Make sure that the face of the adjustable square is even along the miter slot. With the end of the adjustable square just touching the edge of the tooth, lock the square in place and then mark the tooth with a felt tip pen. Rotate the blade towards the other end of the table insert and slide the adjustable square down and compare the distance using the same tooth. If there is a gap, measure it with a feeler gauge. If it is closer, reset the square using the rear position and measure the gap at the front position. Place a piece of masking tape on the table where you measured the gap and write the measurement on the tape. Tilt the table to 45 degrees and repeat these steps. If the blade is not parallel within specifications at one or both positions, then it will need to be adjusted. How you adjust will depend on the type of table saw that you have. The G0690 is a cabinet-style table saw and has its trunnions mounted to the cabinet, so adjustments are normally made by loosening the bolts and moving the table. If the blade is off by the same amount at both 90 degrees and 45 degrees, then the table simply has to be moved sideways to align the miter slot and the blade. For cabinet saws, the first step is to locate the bolts that hold the table to the cabinet. They are typically located in the four corners of the cabinet. Carefully loosen these bolts about 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. You want them to be just loose enough that they can move when you tap the table edge with a dead blow hammer. If you loosen them too much, it'll be harder to hold any adjustments you make before the bolts get retightened. Once the bolts are loose, gently tap the table in the needed direction using the dead blow hammer. Recheck the alignment with the adjustable square and continue making small adjustments until everything is aligned. When you're satisfied with the adjustment, tighten the table mounting bolts. Double check that nothing moved when you tighten the bolts. Now let's look at how to adjust contractor and hybrid type table saws like the G0715P, which have the trunnions mounted to the underside of the table. So adjustments are performed by moving the trunnions. To do this, you'll need to loosen the bolts that hold one of the trunnions and tap it sideways to bring things into alignment. The first step is to access the trunnion. Remove any covers or panels to expose the trunnion bolts. Loosen the bolts about 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. Using a hammer and a drift or punch, gently tap the trunnion on the side to move it in the needed direction. Recheck the alignment using the adjustable square and continue making small adjustments until everything is in a line. Once you are satisfied with the adjustment, tighten the trunnion mounting bolts and replace any covers. Double check that nothing moved when you tightened the bolts. The second type of adjustment is made when the initial measurements are different at 90 degrees and 45 degrees. If this is the case, then you will need to add or subtract shims between the table and the cabinet or trunnions. For cabinet saws, adding shims to the two rear table corners will move the rear of the blade further from the miter slot. Adding them under the two front corners will move the front of the blade further from the miter slot. Now remember, when we first checked the saw, we said to measure from the miter slot on the side that the blade tilts away from. If for some reason you measured the opposite side, then shimming the table as I just described will have the opposite effect. Shimming of contractor and hybrid saws has the reverse effect. This is because the trunnions are mounted on the underside of the table instead of the saw cabinet. When you add or remove shims, only shim a small amount. This will allow you to sneak up on the perfect alignment without going past. Make sure you only loosen one bolt at a time so the direct side-to-side adjustment of the table or trunnions is not affected. Once you have added or removed shims, recheck your measurements and then add or remove more shims until you're satisfied with the alignment. Double check that all bolts are tight and replace any covers. Now it's time to make some sawdust.